time in. And again, as this thing seems to change daily, I say continue to be safe and sound. Wear your face mask. I know a lot of places are cracking down, and it's the most important thing we could do. I know for myself, my comments I make too, living on the river, I've had to adjust for more time swimming than ever before. I would like to wish everybody too, especially fathers, a late Father's Day. I know I just got the word last week, my son and wife had my youngest son, they had their first baby.
Congratulations.
In Florida, and Grandma and Grandpa are still trying to figure out whether we're coming or going. But I know he's been actually 1 week and he's already a father, and he's learning about taking care of babies is more work than working for fisheries, but a lesson to be learned. So mainly I just want to say thank you to everybody for attending, and I know this seemed to be more and more meetings will be going this way. And I guess we can go from there to the previous minutes. A motion to accept them.
I'll move them.
Tim?
Second. There's, Mr. Chairman, just the word, a typo perhaps, phase, as in phased in, with a P-H-A-Z-D.
Oh, okay. Craig had it.
I'm sure Rhonda put that in there just to make sure we were reading.
Absolutely.
That's the way it was done. Yeah, every week every month there's a trick one.
We should offer a prize for whoever finds it.
Right. Yeah. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Treasurer and financial report.
Hopefully everybody received their packet.
Can you hear on it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Total assets $192,514.53. Bills for approval $7,552.24. There's 3 added bills. Watkins Garden Center for $30. Fulton County SWCD for $212.80, and Spectrum $134.97. That's it.
Any questions on those before we get a motion to accept it? Everybody's had a chance to read it?
So just a question then, Rhonda. On the abstract of vouchers to be paid, there's another Watkins for 30. Is that above and beyond what we have in front of us?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. And thank you.
I think there should be only one bill from Watkins for $30.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's 3 bills, only one's Watkins.
Oh, okay. Okay. I thought they were saying there was 2 bills from Watkins for $30.
Nope.
Nope.
Okay, a motion to accept.
So moved.
Susan,
Second.
Okay. Tim? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, carried. Correspondence.
All right, just a couple items. But first of all, I'd like to point out that we did invest and bought a webcam, and it seems to be working well because it has a built-in microphone. So if you guys can hear Rhonda, she's on the other side of the room. We're very happy with that. So, and actually, it's very hard to get one right now. So there's not a lot in stock. So, but getting to the correspondence, we only have 2. Just received in the mail on Friday, June 26th. There's a LGA's 135th annual meeting. It's going to be virtual. I will send an invite out for any director who is interested in viewing it. I would assume, Susan, that you've gone to them before. You've been to 1 or 2 in the past?
I think yes.
Yeah. So, they usually have a guest speaker and a show of projects, kind of similar to what we do, but on a larger scale. But I'll send out the invite to everybody. I'll just scan this in and send it out. Secondly, we received an email from a Rebecca Ryan. And it says, Dean, this is great to hear, Dean. Thank you for letting me know. This is about the funding that was apportioned to the mental health folks last month. I plan to be in the office starting a little next week, so I'll be on the lookout for it. We are so appreciative of this funding. Thank you so much for all your help and guidance through the process. So what you folks do decide with that Part C funding does make a difference in the communities, and I think it's perfect application for that funding. So as much as we can provide at this stage. So.
Okay, on to the next item. Presentation, training.
All right, that'll be Bob.
All right, I trust Nick is tutored me
I
on
wouldn't
showing
trust
you.
Nick.
Yeah, I'm just trying to be polite. And he tells me if I press this button here, you'll be able to see my little PowerPoint presentation.
Reminder, Bob, you're being recorded.
I understand. Did that work?
No.
No.
Let me see. Now try. Yep, works.
There we go.
Okay. So Jim asked me to give you a quick rundown on our Lakes and Ponds program. It started in 17 from a Lake Champlain Basin grant. We went out and got a rudimentary YSI water sampling handheld meter.
Hey, Bob.
Yes?
Can you go under slideshow on your screen? Up to the top, so slideshow.
Well, I clicked it. It didn't appear to do anything.
I'm seeing a slideshow.
All right, I'm just trying to get a bigger screen because we're seeing the, like when you're editing it. There we go. From beginning, over on the left-hand side.
Yeah.
Okay, click that. There we go.
There you go.
You got it?
Yeah, full screen now.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Nick didn't tell me about that. Just trying to throw you under the bus. Now that we're doing this, how does it move on by itself? Do I have to do something?
You move it just like a regular presentation.
Oh.
It's a forward arrow or the carriage return.
Okay.
Yep.
Carriage return?
What's funnier, saying that correctly, you knowing it.
Showing our age, Craig. Carriage return, I understood. Except for I don't have that little arm anymore.
Yeah.
Ding. Ding. Okay. So the picture you're seeing, we'll get to that later in the presentation, but just remember that picture. What we do, the folks have been calling us about personal property ponds, and almost always it falls within one of these three areas that they're interested in finding about their water bodies, whether it's just general water chemistry. So do you see my cursor too, folks?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Then I should quit doing that. All right. Or whether their ponds are capable of holding a certain species of fish. Most often here it's been trout, and most often they cannot. But that's always one of the major questions. Or they're concerned about some of the plants that are showing up on their surfaces going into the year. But generally speaking, that's it's one of those three parameters that they're most concerned about. It's got some kind of thing hanging. There we go. Plant surveys take up probably about a third of the pond questions that we get, and this is an example of it. gentleman up in the town of Horicon came to us. He was from, I believe, New Jersey, an orthodontist from New Jersey or something, and had been coming up to Brant Lake for a couple of years, had been looking for a piece of property, continually came up either early in the spring or late in the fall, and kept touring the property at those time periods, and he thought he bought himself a pretty nice piece of property. This is a man-made pond. And every time he was up there, it looked pretty much like this picture here on the left. He finally completed the sale and moved in there in July. And when he did, the pond looked much as it does there on the right. It turns out the pond is only a couple of meters deep and has nearly 100% coverage with an emergent plant called Brasinia, also known as water shield. And he was pretty upset when he called. We went up and took a look, and his hopes were to have a little swimming hole and fishing pond for his grandchildren.
Bob?
Yes.
What road is this on?
I could look it up on the computer.
Okay.
I'll look it up.
It's on the back north side of Brant Lake.
Yep, off of Palisades,
Yeah, you turn
Hemingway
onto-
Road.
I'm sorry.
Hemingway Road?
Yes, it is Hemingway Road. It's actually the last property on Hemingway Road.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt.
I'm sorry.
Sorry to interrupt, but
No, that's okay. It is Hemingway Road. So, he asked for some suggestions on what to do, and short of dredging the pond again and doing some mechanical harvesting, and in this case, a pond like this, it would literally be just dragging an old bait spring through it, or a cable or a chain. It's an emergent plant. Plant floats to the surface at the end of a stem, and it's the only active leaf on the plant. So if you continually sweep through there and remove those emergent leaves, sooner or later they'll die back. But I also warned him it's pretty much the primary plant in the pond also, and if he does that without them taking up the nutrients, he would probably most likely face a pretty horrible algae bloom. So I got him in contact with the APA, and there were discussions between he and Lee Walrath up there about what could and could not be done to try to take care of the problem. But I haven't heard back from him, so I think he either gave up or got it done to his satisfaction. But that was one of the first ponds that we worked on up there. And the next, jeepers. There were two more. And Brasinia seems to be one of the plants that's taking off in the region more and more. The pond on our right is a small pond on a personal property off Kelms Forest Lake Road in the town of Warrensburg, just shy of the Chester line. I went up there, and it was pretty much the same situation. His pond was becoming more and more enclosed with, once again, the same plant, Brasinia, the water shield. And, we discussed a number of things that he could do, raising the dam level, closing it off. I told him he could attempt to do a drainage and let it overwinter. Generally doesn't work very well. The plant will come back after a couple of years, but he wasn't really interested in too much of that. He was more worried that there was something wrong with the pond, and pretty much explained to them that, it's just part of the natural process, and changes in weather will cause changes in plant composition. So he was pretty happy with that, because we also ran some of our chemistry on the pond, and I told him that it was in basically pretty good shape. And the pond on the left over in Thurman, that's number 9 pond in the town of Thurman. The gentleman that owned the property there, he was concerned because of submerged plants in the lake, and wanted to make sure it wasn't milfoil. So I don't recall if Nick came out with me on this one or it was Dean. It may have been one of the interns at the time too. But we went out and paddled around the pond, and it turns out it was a potamogeton, a native plant. They were there at a new time of the year when the emergent leaves for the plant had come to the surface, and they were worried it was milfoil, but it was, I talked to them. It's a very nice little pond over in Thurman. Those are the type of concerns that these folks had. Going on to the next, we've had a couple of calls in the last few years about the amount of algae. Of course, it's considered a plant, but these are a little different. On our left, we're looking at Beaver Pond, also up in the town of Horkin, just on the north side of Brant Lake. I believe it was the storms of 2011 may have ruptured the dam. Is that correct, Jim?
I don't recall that, because I think the outlet is the road.
Yeah, and I think it got taken out during
Okay.
Irene or Lee or something. But
Okay.
this pond was empty for several years. They recently, within the last two years, I think, have replaced the dam and refilled the pond. And just as soon as it filled up, it came back. They were noticing some pretty significant algae problems, which is easily explained. The area had been dry for several years. You could see in some of the older pictures of just the stream moving right through here. So all that material was exposed. They had tremendous amount of plant growth in here. With reintroducing water into the basin, all that plant material died, obviously, and is being broken down. So they got into a kind of a hyper-eutrophic state for a little while, and we're having a filamentous algae bloom. And once they knew it wasn't anything out of the ordinary, it kind of relieved their fears. And I spoke to the woman once again, who actually happened to be a card party friend of Jane Smith's, who we all know from Schroon Lake. She had us meet at New Way Lunch in Warrensburg. I didn't want to call it Dirty John's. New Way's Lunch and had a little meeting with the woman, and she was very appreciative to all the help that we were able to give her in the program. And the one on the right is what's referred to in the area as Eisenhart's Pond. It's between Amherst and Garrison, I believe, off of Bay in the city of Glens Falls. Its water source is Crandall Pond, and the outflow of Crandall Pond going down Bowman, where Nick has done some work, some stormwater work on Bowman, trying to relieve the outflow creek from Crandall Pond of some of the contaminants it's getting, although that particular creek that runs right through my neighborhood here collects a tremendous amount of stormwater both off of Glen and off of Bay at some point. Nick put in a rain garden not a long distance from here, a block over. But during our heavy storm events, the water that comes off Bay and into this creek is not of the highest quality. Let's put it that way. So this pond has kind of a history of problems. I believe, if I have the story correct, that there was some attempt to use PCBs as a inhibitor for plant growth, and General Electric was required to come in and dredge this pond, and try to get as much of those contaminants out as they could.
And that was dredged. I remember seeing that when Cliff Frazier was here. So that was about 2003. They dredged that material out, and if I recall correctly, they were binding it with alum, maybe, or gypsum. I think it was gypsum.
Gypsum.
And then they were shipping it out to Buffalo to burn.
Yeah, out to the burn plant in Buffalo. Which
Is this part of the MS4? Is this anything on that stormwater program? Or is this totally off the grid?
Well, it would be something that the city would be, involved in, because it's in the city boundary, so it'd be the city's MS4 until it got to the town of Queensbury, and then Queensbury would be interested in it. So, yeah, it's a heavily developed area, and that's part of the reason for that program. So, my understanding, there was the former general lived there, and he's the reason that they were able to get PCBs and spray it along the shoreline to keep all the vegetation down. So that's the story I got over and over again.
Yeah. So a gentleman that lives in this house at 1 o'clock here, he gave me a call. He's talked to us about a couple of different things. Water in the cellar, which if you've ever been down here, you can understand why that's occurring. He's right on this pond. There's a lot of groundwater in this area anyway. But he had the numbers, so he gave me a call. And early during the pandemic at home time period, I took a walk over and met with him for a couple hours. And his concerns was filamentous algae, which they get quite a bit of here in the summer period. Sorry.
Is that Cole?
Yeah, I wish it was Cole. It's the dogs. They've decided now's the time to fight under my feet here. I think me talking has got them upset. Regardless of that, we took a stop over. I informed them I'd come over a little later in the year once the weather gets a little warmer and we'll see the conditions at its worst, which should be sometime this week, I hope, because it's pretty hot down here. But these are the two that called specifically worried about filamentous algae. Now most chemistry, we've done chemical runs on two, not including our separate Glens Falls water treatment. Both Crystal Lake asked us to come in and run chemistry profiles for them. Just sort of a supplemental, because these guys are all on CSLAP or some sort of a private program. And Sunnyside, where we've run temperature and dissolved oxygen profiles and stuff for them. But really, those are the only two that have really asked just specifically for chemistries. The lion's share of what we have are folks asking about suitability for different fish species. Here on the upper left, this is a drone picture taken by Randy Rath from the LGA. You'll recall from our previous meetings, we talked about allowing the Boy Scout Camp Reed to get another $1,000 to continue stocking one of the ponds on their property. with largemouth bass. Dean and I and Jim Panero from DEC stopped over. If you recall, I was a little nervous about stocking largemouth bass and in this particular pond just because it butts right up to the backside of the Fair Lake Wilderness area. And from my previous work with DEC, I've seen what happens when we get a black bass population put into a water system that may not fit their lifestyle perfectly. They'll try to get out and go someplace else. And I thought the last thing we needed was to start sending black bass up into the Fair Lakes Wilderness area, especially if some of those trout ponds would be affected. So Dean and I contacted Camp Reed. We went up, took a look at the situation with Jim Panero. He asked us if we could, a little later in June, to go and take a look, see if we could find any sign of reproduction. We got Randy Rath to come up with us one morning, take a fly around with his drone. And basically what he did was he flew over the entire littoral zone at about 200 feet in the air, taking pictures and video the entire distance. He downloaded the photos to us. We started looking through the pictures, trying to identify what may or may not be black bass nests, spring spawning nests. And after looking at about 150 photographs, we came up with one possibility. And I'm not sure, you can see the arrow right now, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's right on the edge of about the only thing we could find that may have been a centrarchid nest. We saw no signs while we were paddling around doing our chemistries of any bass. We did see larger schools of small fish, but at a distance where we couldn't definitively say one way or the other what the species was. We sent these pictures on to Jim Panero, and Jim said, yeah, it could be, or it could be something a Cub Scout dug out there last year, or it could be a spring hole. So we're rethinking what else we may do to try to officially see if there's any kind of spawning going on for the bass. There's also some concern that they may not be mature enough at this point to already be spawning. So we're giving that some thought on what we can do to try to define this. We also ran a chemistry on there. They had done some work earlier through Steve Lemaire in under a previous group. So we're trying to get a hold of his information so we can compare some of our numbers, see if there's any kind of change going on. And we will go out again in July and do a quick run. Now, one of these runs only takes about an hour. It's a fairly quick thing. If the pond's fairly close to us, we can be all done in 2.5 hours between leaving, doing the survey and getting back. So they're not tremendously time consuming on the day of doing it. Interpreting the data is a little bit different. That takes up a little time. Up here on the upper left, this is in Johnsburg. We got a call from a gentleman this year. He's starting a little homestead up there. He lives in Florida during the winter and wants some place to come up that's sustainable, I guess. He's talking about raising trout. It's a fairly small pond, but it's rather deep. It's about 20 feet deep. It's all spring fed. The numbers from when we did the survey were outstanding. I mean, it was early June, so early in June it wasn't exceptionally warm like this yet.
Bob, is that man-made?
It is. it was a wetlandish area. From what I'm told, it's about 30 years old. It was kind of a wetlandy area, and the previous owner was an excavator. He came in and dug himself a pond.
I'm sure he had all the permits. Yeah.
From what I understand, it's not like he would have been caught. It's kind of off the beaten path. It would have had to been someone flying over who caught him. But it's a very pretty little pond with all of the plants I would want to see. It actually has a pretty healthy minnow population, which were dace, which kind of surprised me. I don't know if he went and got them or how they would have gotten in there, but I mean, it's set up as a real pretty little trout pond, and I think he should be able to keep them. You know, I did tell him, you know, there isn't any space for natural reproduction. There's no stream involved with it. They'll try, but I'm not sure that it'll succeed. But you know, with supplemental feeding, you could probably raise as many trout as you'd want to eat in the summer. But it's a nice little body of water. Just under the hill from him, he's on the mountain on the west side of Garnet Lake Road, and on the east side of Garnet Lake Road, and about a mile to the south, we came to this pond. It's on Crane Mountain Road. Once again, man-made pond. A doctor from Pennsylvania, I believe, owns it. The caretaker contacted us after buying a number of years of fish from our fish sale, and they never seemed to be able to catch any of them. So he asked us to come take a look. It turns out about two-thirds of the pond is about 2.5 feet deep. There's not a lot of great habitat for fish. There's one, the deep spot is right over here near this algae bed. Yeah, it's about 8 or 10 feet deep. It's same thing once again. They have an overflow pipe outflow. DEC probably wouldn't allow that now because it's taking this as the stream right off of Crane Mountain. The water coming in is beautiful water, but as soon as it hits this pond, just massive amounts of bottom algae. Almost no emergent plants or aquatic plants in here. It's almost all, it's just encased in algae. And if he's throwing fish in here, they're either trying to crawl back out or going upstream because it's just not a very good fish habitat. But we let them know that, and they'll respond accordingly, I guess. They weren't happy with me, but I told them I didn't make the pond. I'm just telling you the conditions. These are the field sheets that we do from a site visit. Not throwing Nick under the bus, but this is his handwriting. I have to try to interpret it, and then I put it into an Excel spreadsheet of my own, so I can manipulate data later and try to see if there's any kind of trending operations going on. But you'll see this one in particular is our trip to Crystal Lake. We can take a look at this, and from this, we look at vertical stratification of our ponds. I assume you guys all know in the lakes and ponds up here during the summertime, they will thermically stratify. There'll be a warm layer on top. There'll be a transition zone known as the thermocline. That's where the water will tend to drop more than a degree a meter. Then below the thermocline, you have what's called the hypolimnion. It's an area of the lake that is out of any kind of influence for its chemistry. The waters between the upper and the lower do not mix during the summer. The water on top mixes quite readily. It has all the oxygen available to it. So basically we're looking, our dissolved oxygen numbers are generally pretty good on top. In the thermocline, where the water gets colder, it holds more gases, so the oxygen will be very good. And then once you're under the thermocline and into the hypolimnion, you will see a gradual reduction until there's just about an extinguishment of dissolved oxygen at the bottom, and that's quite commonly seen in all of our lakes up this way. It will go anoxic near the benthic sediment layer. And at that point down here, that's where you start getting anaerobic bacteria. Will start breaking down all the old plant and decaying wildlife or whatever's in there, whether it's fish or crayfish or whatever. It starts breaking all that stuff down. Then in the fall, temperature goes down, the lake will get cooler until it gets to about 4 degrees C up on the top here. And at that time, that's when we get what's called turnover. The water in the lake will literally physically turn over. The heavier water being cooled by the fall air will reach 4 degrees. That's the densest water gets. So that water will literally go from the top down to the bottom, and that exchanges everything in the water column. It brings newly oxygenated water to the bottom. It brings all the recently released nutrients by the anaerobic bacteria on the bottom up into the water column. And because of that peculiarity of water at densest at 4 degrees, that's why everything works on the planet. It's why our water just doesn't become stagnant. That constant turnover, there's one in the fall, there's one in the spring. That's what makes the freshwater system work. And you can see all that from our temperature data here, our dissolved oxygen data here. Conductivity numbers have little to do with other than watching for some sort of ionic contaminant. In our cases, usually it's road salts.
So Bob, on that dissolved oxygen, on that medium layer there, you have the most of it? And is
Yeah,
that
just because the water's colder,
too
because
low?
it'll hold gases more. Yep.
But the lower depths have less. Is that because it's just less access to oxygen?
Yeah, the water on the top layer, that is constantly, you get constant motion in that top layer. Wind action, wave action, stuff like that causes a complete mixing of that upper layer. And that upper layer is against the thermocline. So when it's bringing fresh oxygen down because of mixing on that upper layer, it gets involved in that colder water, and that colder water will hold a greater amount of, so you get an excellent amount of oxygen in that median layer. But there's no mixing between the top and the bottom layer. So as things are occurring, as natural processes are occurring in that bottom layer and oxygen's used up, there's no replenishment until fall turnover. That water comes back to the top. So that's why you see deoxygenation occurring at those lower levels in the lakes of the world. And this one here, this is the latest readings we took from Camp Reed up in Horicon, Grant Lake. Everything there looked really good for fisheries. And that's what I told Chris, the manager at the camp. These are the exact kind of numbers we expect to see. We have a real hard thermocline here at 3 meters. It drops almost 4 degrees in 1 meter. That's pretty chilly. That's a hard thermocline. And when Nick and I are diving, and he can tell you, you can physically see the thermocline. It almost looks like the shimmer off the road in the summer, with the heat coming off. You'll see the same thing at the thermocline when you're diving down there. You can actually make out the different layer. But but the numbers look real good at the bottom. You know, we have a pretty sharp decrease. This is very close to the bottom, to that anoxic layer. And so that's exactly what we'd expect to see. Like I told them, looking at these numbers here, you know, this could be a trout pond until we got over here to pH. And you know, I'm looking at these numbers, and this is pretty different. This is something you don't see very often. We're on the top. pH is 7 is neutral. That's generally what we like to see. It's a little bit basic at 7.5, but that's fine. 1 meter down, it dropped, you know, almost a half a point. That's a tremendous amount in 1 meter. And as it kept going, I mean, we dropped a full point in 2 meters. I'm not sure I've ever seen that, and it just continues to drop. We've got over a 2-point drop in pH. That confused me quite a bit. I sat there trying to run the sum of all of my knowledge on this stuff and couldn't come up with a reason why we'd see something like that. So I gave some phone calls around to people who are smarter than me and asked about it. And their suggestion was coming right back to these numbers here. This is conductivity. The pond up there is pretty isolated. There's no maintained roads around it. There's no maintained roads in the watershed. So their conductivity numbers are incredibly low, 22, you know, anywhere in that range. Lake George is around 100, and that's considered very good. These guys are at 22. After talking to them, a couple of guys, they both came up with the same reasoning. The field pH probes that we use are not as sensitive as some of the laboratory pH meters that you can get, low ionic strength. Because the conductivity is so low, it renders the pH probe unreliable, is how it was explained to me. And we can go in and take some water samples. With this program, we also got a Van Dorn bottle. It's used for taking discrete samples. You open it up, you can drop it down to any depth, send a messenger down, and it will close that collector at any depth. So if I want to take a water sample from 2 meters, I can take that. I can drop it down to 11 meters and take a sample there, bring it to the surface, and run tests on it. And it allows for it not to be contaminated with any other water levels other than the exact one you want to take.
Is that similar to a camera bottle?
It is. The Van Dorn is a little larger. It is a horizontal bottle instead of the Kramerer is a kind of a vertical, about 1 meter long, usually brass, at least the original ones. Yeah, but that's a vertical sampler. This one is a horizontal sampler, and it holds about 2 liters of water. So it gives you more than enough water to take a number of different constituent samples. But it's basically the same idea. So if we wanted to go back and reconfirm that the actual surface was 7.5 and the bottom was 5.4, we could do that using the equipment that we got from this original grant. So I mean, that's basically the data that we pick up. We bring a Secchi disc. If anybody's seen them before, 8-inch vertical disc, 8-inch circular disc. Alternately colored black and white, and that's just dropped down to give you an idea on transparency. It costs us about $20 as compared to a photometer, which would cost us about $8,000. So we can get basically the same number or as close as we need to with the $8 disc instead of the $8,000 photometer. I was just looking at some old data that we had from our acid rain project. They had all those old photometer readings on it, and I was seeing with a simple mathematical equation, we were getting pretty close just using that mathematical equation with our Secchi reading. But, scientists, they like numbers to be as accurate as possible. So they just soon spend the 8,000 bucks. But this is basically the data that we take from each of those. These over here, this was done before we had the Glens Falls unit that does so much added data. But these numbers over here, they are chlorophyll A. It basically gives us a fairly decent guesstimate on the amount of chlorophyll or phytoplankton blooms and where they're located in the water column during the day, because they will move up and down with the amount of sunlight that's going on. So chlorophyll A is a reading on that. The PC is phycocyanins. Those are the pigments that are found in harmful algae blooms. So this gives us a basic idea on whether we're seeing an extraordinary amount of the cyanobacteria at a given time. Now, these numbers here obviously are very low, and that's exactly what we would expect to see. These numbers are also indicative of this time of year and exactly what we would expect to see. So I told you about the pond in the initial picture. This was the second or third pond we ever visited. Nick had an Upper Hudson River meeting shortly after we got the equipment. And Dustin from Saratoga County had mentioned that they had a pond up in Edinburgh that they were worried about, and asked if we could come with our equipment and take a look at the general water conditions there. I've never quite seen anything like it. It's I remember walking to the edge with one of his employees that went along with me. And when we got there, I looked at the pond. I said, well, this is exactly what we feared since 1988 when we discovered milfoil in Lake George. This pond was clear, I guess, about a decade ago. In the 10 years prior to this, it had gained milfoil. And to the point where when we walked close to the edge, we flushed some frogs that literally jumped across all the way and got off on the other side and never got their butt wet. I mean, that's just how much milfoil is in this pond. And you can see, whoops, I'm sorry. You can see this is the vertical profile we took of it. I went out and tried to find it took me about a half hour to get out there in a canoe, by the way, and the thing's only 100 yards in diameter. You literally can't paddle through it. The paddle weighs too much when you're trying to pull it back out of the water because there's just so much water. But we got out there, we found about 1.5 meters depth. And on the surface where it's touching the atmosphere, there's still only at 5, that's probably about 40% of the oxygen that should be in there at any given time. And just below that, at about 0.5 meter to 1 meter, it was already down to 1.3, and at the bottom it was 1.7. So we moved over to the inflow and did it there, and it wasn't much better. So we took the equipment and walked across the street. There's a street running right about where the field sheet is. Walked across the street to another pond. We put the equipment in there, and at the surface, the water was holding a 10.5 dissolved oxygen on that side. So it has good water coming in. It just once it got in here, and we tried to explain, with all these plants, why wasn't there a tremendous amount of oxygen in the water? Because photosynthesis is going on. It's releasing oxygen into it. That's a candidate for herbicidal use if I've ever seen one. Either that or paving. Might pave it and use it as a parking lot, but That's exactly what we've been afraid of running into since milfoil was discovered. But those are the type of calls we're getting with the pond program, and I see Jim's looking nervous that I'm going on too long, so that's about it.
Thank you, Bob.
Any questions? Nobody?
No, I learned.
Good job, Bob.
Yeah, it was like a review for me. Remember my lithiology classes, and boy, it's been a while. I might, good refresher, very good job. It was very, very comprehensive.
And I think, I mean, Bob, last year when you went out on the city property, I know Mike went with you.
Yes.
For one day. So if any director wants to go out and check that out, you're certainly able to do that. You know, so if any director is interested in going out to a pond site with Bob to see what goes into it, just I would say shoot him an email today or so and just say, I'm interested. If there's something nearby where you live, or maybe you don't want to be nearby, maybe you want to be in another town, but yeah, we're always happy to take them out. So the dogs will stay behind.
Yes, they will.
I would like to see Bob walk across this pond.
You know what?
I second that.
20 years ago, I might have been able to been fast enough to get most of the way across. Right now, it'd be an instant drop.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Now you have to hit escape.
Yeah, all right.
Turn off your screen share.
So he's gonna get rid of the presentation first.
Stop share. How's that?
Ah,
Yes.
Wow, and everybody's still awake.
Yeah, that was very good. Thank you. All right, we're going to go on to office operation plan, monthly review and discussion.
All right, so you know, New York is moving forward. We're in phase 3 starting last week. We haven't changed anything, I don't believe, as far as in the plan. Yeah, we just had the one email that I sent out to everybody a couple weeks ago when Martin was going out with Scott to make sure that everybody was good with having somebody other than a district folk go out. Yeah, I talk about every other week with the county to see what's going on there, and so far it's the DPW is back full force, but a lot of the office is not. Warren County Planning, they're not going to be back much at all. So I think we're good for the course right now, and that ties into the second thing or the third thing, fourth thing, D, down the list. But you know, I'll touch base with the state committee and the county and see the next few weeks if there's any recommendations to our plan. I did check because Governor Cuomo is now getting, you know, they're terminating the one amendment he had to the open meetings law. So it's a little strange. We have this listed on our website, this meeting, and it's no password or anything, you just log into it. But because our office is closed and because we do that, we should be fine with open meetings law because it's accessible. We can take questions automatically, but there's no litmus test to this. So if somebody wanted to attend the meeting, we could do that. And then if they got upset, they could file a request to have a review, or we could open up the windows and put chairs out there and things like that. I'm not too worried about it, but you never know. So right now, I think everything's going fine. Everybody seems to be doing well.
Anybody got any questions, concerns? Hang in there as we're going to see what happens next. The next issue, Warren County Fair.
So we were partnering with the Cornell Cooperative Extension 4-H for the fair this year. 2 weeks ago, the Dutchess County Fair closed. I called John Bowe over at Extension and just trying to figure out what's going on. He and I spoke about some of the concerns I had from our perspective, because we were going to have some of the fair over here. It was going to be a homesteading type of fair. They're not sure if they can even host it based on insurance requirements. The county wasn't really, I guess, some of the supervisors who are on it knew it, but the county in general didn't realize that it was being developed. So I had talked to Mark briefly, and I said my decision, I think that we should drop out of it because I think it's going to be canceled anyway. But when all these large fairs are getting closed, kind of let them take the lead. The state fair is still in discussion as to whether they're going to close for the year. So we might not have a New York State Fair. One of the concerns that I had was in a normal year, if we did this, we'd probably see 500-600 people, I would guess, because there's going to be, I think, some interesting stuff. When there's everything else canceled and there's nothing else going on in the beginning of August, we could see a lot of people, which is probably not something the county wants. So anyway, unless somebody has an issue with that, I already let John know that we were talking today, that most likely we're going to not move forward with that, but keep it planning in for next year, have it hosted over here as well. I'd already talked to the DPW. They were going to have a crosswalk installed and staff to man the crosswalk. So we can defer that to next year. So I don't know if anybody has any questions on that.
Okay, no comments or questions. We'll go to the State Envirothon. Dean.
Hello. Yeah, State Envirothon went quite well. They held it digitally. Although they didn't hold the national one, we did. I do sit on the State Envirothon committee, and I usually am the oral presentation judge. Although we opted not to do the oral presentation component, our Warren County team did quite well on the exams. They did pretty well on the exams. They came in tied for 11th out of 20 teams that made it to the state level. You know, there's no doubt we actually have a very good team in Warren County, some very bright students, but I think there was a little impact from the social distancing that, you know, they couldn't get together, couldn't be with a teacher, couldn't, you know, amass their knowledge, I think, in the best manner possible. So that's why I'm trying to bail them out for that 11 out of 20. I think they were capable of being in the top 5 personally, but anyways, that has nothing to do with my son being on that team. I may have just incriminated myself, but anyways. And on that note, just as it relates to the board, in 2024, New York State will host the national, slightly international Envirothon. So, you know, as I do my updates over the next few years, I'll give you a jot and some information about that. But I have a feeling Jim will probably see a letter coming through from the State Envirothon or the CDA about asking for a little more funding, a little bit over the years to help with that. This is my first experience hosting that. I think I came on the year it actually was held in New York State, and I just wasn't involved in the program. I didn't know about it. So, but anyways, our kids did pretty good, came in halfway, middle of the pack, and for all practical purposes, it was a success. And actually, it was highly regarded that New York pulled it off by the national committee that didn't hold the national event. It was just too cumbersome to do at that level. So having said that, if there are any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Nice job, Dean.
Yeah, good job, Dean. I think it's just nice being able to have the competition. And, well, I got to give you credit for this. That's a challenge when you start doing an Envirothon competition that way.
Thanks.
We'll go right into office computers and technology.
All right, so I actually spoke to Mike Greenslade about this because I thought it was important enough to get his feedback. So we have 2 laptops. One is Bob has one and Dean has one right now. I don't know if Dean's using it with a plug-in or not. He's out in, I don't know, Canada or California or something like that. I don't know. Yates County, that's right. So, we have 2 laptops. This one, what we're using right now is the Quickie laptop. The treasurer for that, so we're using that. You know, what we're looking at in the fall, nobody really knows. It seems like things are pointing to another round of COVID. So whether, you know, what are we going to do as a staff? What are we going to do as an office? You know, if we're working from home, it would be nice to start looking at transitioning for laptops for staff. Our towers are good right now. We could actually replace our one of our old towers that we use for our GPS and a few other things with one of the existing towers. But staff's taking the towers home. They are using their own personal stuff when necessary. So kind of a decision needs to be made. And do we go all in on that for the future, not just right now, but for the future? Again, the 2 laptops we have, one is probably 2 years old, the other is probably 5 years old. There's different levels of what we all do. The new GIS that we have the availability for through the county is all online, so it would be a learning process, but we would catch up on that fairly quickly. Not everybody needs to be doing all of that. But right now, we don't know what the budget's going to be from the county. We don't know what it's going to be from the state. However, the only thing we do know is that, with us scaling back almost everything on Part C, we have funds that we can transfer into technology to purchase that. We could also look at a software service that if you're at home, you can log into your computer here and access it from this point. But right now, I haven't looked at that too much. I'm looking at actually hardware for the staff. I don't know if we want to discuss it in more detail, but right now, I'd like to get approval to transfer probably $2,000. Laptops, I just did a quick query on Friday. A laptop we would utilize would be about $500, and you add software on top of it, you're probably talking about $700, I would think, per. So, that would be something that I would recommend looking at, especially if we're going to be working from home. That way, Marin doesn't have to take her tower home and bring it back every other week. Now, when you weren't here for 6 weeks or 5 weeks, it wasn't that big of a deal. Same thing with Nick and
I
Dean.
gotta talk about it.
I'm not too worried about it because Rhonda and I were essential. She has her laptop, so there's another one. There's someone who's using her stuff. We have a mix of stuff, and we really shouldn't for the liability for the users. So I'd like to see if we can at least start a discussion on that and get thoughts from other people who have done this through business and things like this. If we wanted to take more money, that's fine, and put it towards there, but it wasn't something we were planning. But at the same time, we were planning on multiple other Part C projects. So Rhonda will find out July 1st what we're getting from the county. We have not heard if we're being cut. Franklin County's second half payment is down 50%. They've already been told next year, I think they're cut 50%. Other districts out there are kind of in the same boat. I don't know. I think our county might be a little bit in a better position, and they're a little bit more optimistic. And if you were out at all this yesterday or Saturday, you would never know that there was any impact because there were cars everywhere. So I'm sure Susan over in Bolton, you saw that. It's just, I can't believe how many people were out this weekend. So, but anyway, there's kind of a lot to think about on a little subject. So,
Yeah.
I appreciate any thoughts.
Yeah, I'll just put my 2 cents in. I know talking to some people in the world of business today, I hear more and more companies are talking to more time being spent home in the future. They're already planning this, and I think we should be prepared for it. Something we should look at. I'm a strong believer that we're going to see this continue. We'll be asking people to work home, no matter. I've seen this a lot, whether it's DEC or whether it's a private company. They're saying we're going to be working home. So something I think we should look into. Maybe we should get some prices and some ideas what you need. We can go from there and pull it on at the next time. Any other comments on that?
Yeah, and the laptop of today is just as sophisticated as any tower. It may, I haven't owned a tower in 15 years.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and that's why whenever, unless you're involved in online gaming, it doesn't really matter. You could walk into Best Buy and get almost an Asus for. I wouldn't say that for our purposes, but if you're just getting, like my father could get that, and he would be fine for the rest of his life with that. It's 10 times what a computer or laptop was 4 years ago. So I agree with you.
And it's always good to have the portability.
Yep.
Yeah, especially since the staff is so portable.
Yeah. Some of us aren't as flexible as we used to be, but we are portable. So, all right, I will look. How many would you like me to look at for pricing? Because that might make a difference. You want me to look at 2, 3, 4? Because we have 2. Again, one's 4 years old, one's 2 years old.
See, if you're getting 4 years old, I was told the other day my 5 or 6 year old one is getting near the end of the world. I'd say at least a couple. If they throw in a third one for half price, I don't know.
Well, we will see. All right, I will look for. I will just go with 4. I'll go with 4, and then with the appropriate software to get up and running, which would be antivirus, which would be the Windows not Windows platform, but everything from Excel to Word to Publisher. And I think we can go through the county on the online GIS. Our towers are still going to be here. And with the thumb drives of today, you can basically transport everything on a thumb drive practically when we need to. So
If you're uploading things to the cloud, you won't need the thumb drives.
yeah, I'm just thinking here, yeah, that's true. I can't get everything up, Susan. And make sure there's a camera and a mic on it.
Mic and camera, yeah.
So, and a bag. So I'll get price on all that.
Okay, we'll go on to the Westbrook Conservation Initiative.
So the stormwater wetlands actually doing very well. It's pulling nutrients out, it's pulling phosphorus, nitrogen. The only thing it's not doing is salt, which we all know that salt, once it hits water, it just goes straight down to the groundwater. The Village of Lake George and our office is setting up some time to go do some work in the next week or two. That's based on the committee that we have. We're going to be adjusting a couple weirs. The county has volunteered to assist with dredging the first pond, which is the 4-bay pond, which has the sediment from the roadway. We're going to do that. We're looking to do that in September. We've already generally scheduled that. The village is going to be providing support as well. And in September, the county is providing us a field crew from one of the roads who did the cutting in the gravel wetland a few years ago in spring. We're going to get them lined up for a day, and they're going to cut several areas of cattails that are still living before they start to go dormant for the year. And we'll get volunteers and we'll pull everything up and get rid of those nutrients that are locked up in the vegetation and remove some of that physically from there. So I think everything is moving forward very well on that now. Everybody has an understanding of costs, how the system works to get reimbursed, how work requests go. So I'm very pleased everybody's done a very good job working on that. And I think the results are shown through Jim Sutherland's studies and the reports that we do. Any questions on the Westbrook Conservation Initiative?
Okay, we go from Westbrook to the Upper Hudson River Watershed Coalition.
Nick, do you want to speak on that?
Yeah, we had a brief meeting the other day, but I think because we switched our meeting around, we were missing a good chunk of the group, but that's all right. So our Upper Hudson River Watershed Revitalization Plan, which was a DOS grant, has been finalized and it's been printed. So we'll have 2 copies of that coming to our office shortly. Jim sent out the email so you could download the PDF version of it, but it came out as a really nice document. I sent out the PDF version to the city of Glens Falls today because the porous sidewalk project we did on Webster was actually one of the highlighted projects in the grant, which was really nice. So it was good promo for the city and for the grants that we worked with them on that just got closed out. But yeah, it turned out it's a great document. We'll be able to utilize this on grant applications. We're already looking into turning it into a 9-point. Do you know what that's called, Jim?
a 9-element plan.
9-element plan, right? Which costs significantly more money. But we're looking into it with DEC and possible future grants. But Allison at the Lake Champlain Lake George Regional Planning Board did a good job at really pulling it all together at the end for the group. So the coalition is very happy with it. So if you have any questions when you're looking at it, feel free to reach out to me. We've already had people receive the document, and they were asking Allison at the Lake Champlain Regional Planning Board about the GIS mapping and if there was ways to make it interactive. I talked to Jim about it. I'm like, that's a little out of my league, but we could certainly send them, the GIS data if they wanted any of it. But we got a lot of good compliments on the mapping Jim and I did. So we're happy with that. And we're getting a lot of great feedback on the document. But so yeah, if you have any questions as you look at it, feel free to reach out.
Just a quick comment, Nick. I took a few minutes to look through that this morning, and very impressive, comprehensive report.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was a lot of hard work from all 7 counties involved in the regional planning board. So it's been a couple of years in the making. It started a little slow, but we got through it on top of 3 other grants we were working on as a coalition. So all in all, the Upper Hudson River Watershed Coalition has had a great couple of years, and we're going to try and keep that momentum and continuously have grants and acquire grants to kind of bring all the counties together in the watershed. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to echo the comments that Tim had. I kind of read through it and I was impressed. I said, wow. I don't know if I had any questions on it, but he sure covered a lot of ground. Well done. Very, very professional. I was really kind of impressed with it. I didn't know what to expect, Nick. I figured, 20 pages, 20, 30 pages. And I said, oh, I didn't expect a book. That was well done.
And we are getting a couple how many hard copies?
2 hard copies in our office.
So we'll have them, they'll be in-office copies, but
each municipality will have 2 copies too.
yeah, and if any of the board members want to support the local forest products industry, we can print a copy off for you.
How many pages is that? I forgot. 222 or something like that.
Right.
Okay, we'll go to Champlain Watershed Improvement Coalition.
So Quickney has done some teleconferences. The last one we did, it was just kind of reviewing funding. I revamped the budget for Quickney. Pretty easy when you don't have any money coming in because the stormwater trade show is canceled. So fortunately, we were fairly diligent in the last few years about saving money and we were trying to save up actually for potentially hiring a staff. So we have funds to get us to the next few years with basically Quickney carries the insurances as we feel are necessary and tax preparation. So there's about $5,000 a year. Along with some grants management that gets expended. But I'll let Dean speak on the grant that he's managing for Quickney with Warren County that you're familiar with. So Dean, if you can just give a quick update on that.
Yeah, I guess everything's going along fine. There was a little miscommunication between Quickney sending back an email in the midst of all the COVID and the communications and Zoom meetings. I got dropped off of a communication, which just kind of put a little extra time on getting a contract back and forth to the right people and getting some information. But the county put the model out to bid. They received back their information. We should be moving forward as soon as the county makes a decision where that funding would come from for what we spoke about last month, the augmented reality sandbox, which Jim talked about at length. But it's a really cool model, helps teach a lot of watershed water quality components. So, but yeah, as soon as that discussion comes about, I look forward to doing a lot of educational components. We'll be housing this at Up Yonder Farm in Bolton Landing, and as grants go, all the 4 major partner logos will be on all publications for educational materials. So we'll keep you posted on other updates as it comes through.
Any questions for Dean? Okay, moving on. Warren County Water Quality Strategy Committee meeting.
All right, so we did have a Zoom meeting several weeks ago. I will say it wasn't heavily attended. It was kind of disappointing because Sarah Frankenfeld from Warren County Planning, I think, had an excellent presentation on information that's available to everyone and anyone. Basically, lake associations would be the ones who benefit from it. And those are the folks who usually reach out to us to try to get questions answered. And we don't mind answering them at all. That's our job, but they could have gotten some good information out of that. So I sent out a little doodle poll the other day for our July 8th meeting, basically saying, hey, please respond and check mark if you'd be interested in it. And so far we've got about a dozen replies, so most likely throw one together. We'll just make it a short meeting. There probably won't be a presentation on it, but we're trying to keep that moving forward. It's just basically an ad hoc group and talking about how to work with one lake association to the other, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel on everything. So I've put you on there, you folks on there permanently as an invitee. That's not saying you have to attend. It's just an option if you are interested. And if it looks like the agenda is something heavily towards the Pulitzer Award winning, that's all the better. So.
Okay. Current grant project updates.
Okay, well, won't beat this too hard. I reached out to Karen Dauphiné at the DEC last week. The 3 grants that we received November, December, whatever it was, plans of work had been submitted. I hadn't seen anything. They are moving forward. So hopefully this week or next week, I'll be signing the contracts. That was for several culverts that Bob was working on, which has had to get adjusted because the Halloween storm took care of a couple of the culvert sites. So he's been working on that, trying to get some alternatives. And then the others, engineering studies for, actually we had 4 grants. Sorry, I said 3. 1 implementation of 3 culverts, 2 single culvert engineering designs, and an engineering design for Windcrest Drive for stormwater. So hopefully we'll be signing the contracts on that. The nice thing is, and I'm not sure because this is the the first year of the smaller planning grants through the DEC WQIP. Traditionally, they've allowed a 25% upfront funding. I'm not sure if they'll do that. We'll have to see because that would only be $6,500, and I'm not sure they'd want to do that for $6,500. But that's the good news. There's no grant release for this year. That they're still talking about it. My assumption is that we will see something later in the fall, later in the summer, be lucky to hear anything by next spring. So that's just my feeling. It's a gut feeling. So, but we still have those grants that are just getting signed. The basin program grants are all moving forward. Halfway Brook /invasive /wetlands /bike path. That was quite one that we got for the basin program. Those are all moving forward. Dean and Bob have been working on the wetland stuff. Bob's keeping an eye on for invasives. Martin's getting the bike path stuff all checked out, and then we have to start doing some habitat work on Halfway Brook. What else? Oh, the NACD grant. That's moving forward. Like right now, I think it's more maintenance because of the lack of rain. So a lot of watering.
An interesting hurdle. I actually just got a rain gauge out to start keeping track.
Great.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. So.
The garden.
Yeah, it's been a little bit of a challenge with that one, watering it this time of year or this year, but moving forward with it. Dean's done a great job getting off and running once we were able to with the highway departments for hydro seeding. That's probably going to be a busier year than anticipated. And I was with Pat Wood, the highway superintendent for Thurman the other day, and he's opening up the Upper Hudson River watershed assessment book that we have, and he's starting to pick projects out and move forward. He is a huge fan of check dams and also the bottomless stream arches. He loves them, and he can work his magic with getting funds along with getting funds from us. So I think the grants are actually going along fairly well. Just have to keep an eye on the money.
Just money.
Yeah, it's just the money. So did any of the staff have anything else they wanted to say about their grants?
Good.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the Community Conservation Program funding discussion.
So all I had in that was we didn't have any to review this month. If you'd like for next month, I can put together another budget for that, because if we're going to pull some funding out of there for the computers, but again, we will know what we have for this year. We won't know what we're getting next year from the county until September. We're in for this level funding for Part C for the state at this time. What's the pleasure of the board? Would they like to try to get some other projects from Part C out this year? Would you like to place the majority of those funds in a reserve account? These are things that I know what I would do, but this is not my money. So I think a greater discussion is necessary for the office. So.
Have you had any other requests coming in for community conservation?
Nothing through the grant, but I mean, we also have chosen not to move forward with several other projects. One of them was the urban conservation grant we were going to do with one of the large churches down in the city, working with the folks who lost their garden plots. So we pulled that back. We hadn't spoken, when everything started, it was right around when we were going to start speaking to the church on that. We've helped out in the past on some stormwater supplies, materials, other stormwater stuff. The only thing we've basically done this year is right now several $1,000s out of the community conservation, and I believe it was $2,000 for SUNY Adirondack. That was the agreement for the lakes assessments. We pull funding out of there already for staff time, about $50,000 or so. So that leaves about 60 to 70 roughly. But that can go, either way, because we have a reserve in there. So that's what we have right now. I think
you can anticipate an application from the Friends of Up Yonder for that beehive project.
Okay.
They have that just about completed.
Yeah, and we haven't wiped anything out. I've left the budget as is. But that's what we have to look at. This is where in the years past, out of this overall Part C funding, we pulled the tire recycling program. We've been able to pull things, kind of little projects that help out on different things. We're not doing that right now. So, if you said, yeah, I feel good, we would like you to do this and advertise it and get some money to the communities, I don't have a problem with it, but it just, being aware, we don't know what we're going to get from the county, and we don't know if we're going to receive full funding next year from the state.
You said you knew what you would like to do. What would you like to do?
Well, what I want to do is take the numbers, go through them, and basically I'd like to keep probably $10,000 or so in the Part C that we can utilize for projects. And that's not just for people requesting, but, being able to utilize for, if we go over on the garden, we can pull from that, it's a little bit of that. But I think right now the majority should basically be set aside in a reserve account on a month-to-month approval by the board, so that we can have that and leverage that against potentially a decrease next year from the county. So, and that's legitimate with the changes that they made to that funding last year. So, our car has 80,000 miles on it. Our 1 ton doesn't have nearly that, but it's starting to show age. We're right now turning over our Chevy, which was what I had intended to do, but the prices for what people are buying them for are lower, so I'm hesitant. I don't think we'll be able to cover it. So there's just a lot of things, as you know. So thoughts are there.
Jim, I was just going to interject real quick. I know you took care of the community conservation. As it relates to dry hydrants, which is one of those things, we've been in pretty good shape. There may be a request for a maintenance that will not cost anything, but there might be 2 requests. And I think what we normally allocated for those is a refundable amount of $1,000. So one will likely come in as a request. I don't think the other will. So for what I know, intel as far as those go, I think that might be
Good. Thanks, Dean.
Yep.
So are we in general agreement of like 10,000 and then see what happens?
I would agree to that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
I agree.
So why don't you go ahead and plan on that?
All right, I'll revise the budget.
Right.
Check it with what we've already expended. This will be on top of what we expended. And then we'll be able to have a good idea, because we may be having more staff time coming out of that, but it's, when you're running through the year, we never quite know, so.
Okay, before we get to the July board meeting, we've got a couple issues. One, a landowner concern that Jim wanted to address. And I know we got some comments back, and I think he had a pretty good idea. We can bring this one up.
Yeah, so you got the letter. The individual contacted Martin shortly after the tree and shrub handout. It didn't surprise me. The first time we saw this years ago surprised me. The second time was a little surprising. This wasn't surprising. I mean, take it for what it is. You can read the letter. Hopefully you did. You have my recommendation or suggestion, but I'd like to hear from the board. So.
Well, Jim, I sent you the email. Did you see that? You probably ought to pass that by the county attorney.
Yep.
What you think?
Yep, absolutely.
So we kind of agree with, I kind of agree with what Jim wanted to do. I think the same way, have the county attorney look at it. And I know very often, sometimes when you're dealing with seed companies, there's certain suggestions they make. I know I see the same with Christmas trees. It's your own judgment, but again, it's up to the individual how you feel on the use of Roundup. I know there's a lot of controversy, but I think it's the same way. I like your idea, Jim. See what the attorney says. The other one we have, the NRCS MOU.
So, Dan, I apologize. I should have sent this some information and background to you before. The rest of you, I believe, were familiar with the Memorandum of Understanding that USDA NRCS sent out last year with really no explanation in regards to soil and water districts and how they operate, but they are a partner. So I received an email Friday from Tom Bialy, who's the district conservationist or the team leader who covers the area. Scott Fisher reports to him. Basically asking if we had signed that MOU. Bruce Hopkins had come, trying to think if it was October, November, maybe, I can't recall, to discuss it with the board about the kind of benefits and what consequences there would be, which really for us there were none. Bruce retired. I had no idea he retired. So Tom asked me where we stood on this. I sent him the response that I had sent to Bruce back on January 30th, basically stating, Bruce, as you know, at the meeting, we discussed the points that I had sent you. After the meeting, there was discussion in regards to amendments to the proposed MOA. But from my understanding, there was not any amendments accepted. So there's still, in my mind, a number of outstanding questions. Basically, the easiest thing was, and Dan, I can send you the MOU and the comments. Basically, it says if you're working with NRCS as a partner or in an NRCS building, USDA building, you will adopt and adhere to requirements as specified by USDA, blah, 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 blah. But nowhere does it say what, if a soil and water district such as our case, who, gets assistance, does not get any support from USDA, if we have to adopt that for all of our policies. They will not put that in writing. They said, oh no, it's only when you're doing NRCS programs. I'm not quite comfortable enough with NRCS doing that. I like the people, but this came from Washington. It bypassed New York. Right now, and it's been about a year, they have 23 soil and water districts that have signed it. A lot of those are ag counties or counties that get a lot of USDA support. There are several on there. I'm surprised that they signed. One of them I know that signed though, the response from their district manager is, well, it doesn't really mean anything. So, I'll sign and get them off my back. I don't like to sign contracts that way. So I haven't. And you folks haven't either. So would you like me to follow up with Tom and see if there's anything else? Like I said, he sent this at almost noon on Friday, so it's kind of a short turnaround. I don't think he cares, honestly, but I don't know. It's confusing to me. It's not confusing to me. It's federal policy, so it's designed to be confusing. So
I think we might as well go forward, send them a letter and see what they say. I don't really see where I don't feel like I've changed any.
Okay. I will resend the MOU to all you folks too.
Okay, a few last meetings. How about the July board meeting?
I just have that on there in case something drastically changes, so we can keep it with the Zoom meeting if you'd like. And again, it's open if anybody would like to attend. You're welcome to. We are closed to the public, but that does not apply to our board members, staff, and those folks. So we're good with it. That's why we got the camera. I think it's worked out pretty well there.
Yeah, I did question, Jim, well, the possibility if you could have the meeting while I'm floating in a canoe, but I know it's the same way.
I have no problems with that.
Okay, we'll go forward with that, what we planned. Board of Directors reporting info. We got anything that need to be reported? All right. Others. I know you have a couple other things.
Always. If anybody is interested, I would think, Craig, are you going to be on the Zoom webinar for the Friends Lake annual meeting? Maybe not.
We lost Craig.
Yeah. Well, Nick brought him.
Craig left.
Oh, okay. He called back here. So, all right. If anybody would like to attend the virtual Friends Lake meeting, let me know. I have to do a short presentation on harmful algal blooms, of which they actually have had 3 in the past 5 or 6 years, 2 distinct ones. So, in case I don't know if you saw, we are doing 4-hour erosion sediment control trainings. If anybody is interested, please feel free to sign up. Mike has signed up for June 30th. Right now, we don't have a lot of people signed up. I think we only have 1 or 2, but we just wanted to offer them anyway, and might be a way to make $75. That's what we kept the same charge. So I'd like to, I kind of mentioned Dean earlier with the hydroseeding. He's doing a great job with the erosion sediment control grant as always. Bob got the wetland plant portion of the LCVP all lined up and has been moving on that very well. And Nick and Martin, AEM program is probably 4 or 5 times what it has been at this time of year. Everybody's home, planting, expanding, turning into farms, raising everything. We're fortunate that we expanded the AEM program this year and next year, and I think that's just reflective of the quality of communication that we have with the staff on all of the programs. People want to continue to work with us and the staff, and we are busy. People ask, how are you keeping busy? I'm like, I don't really notice any drop off in work. Maybe a little less paperwork, which is not a bad thing, but it's been great. I'm trying to get a handle on whether the county is going to be receiving funding for the hazard mitigation plan. I have emails out to both the person I was working with for the plan grant and the boss. Neither have responded. I would think at least one of them would be responding by now. So Amy Drexel is working another avenue, trying to find out. Hopefully we will find out. And the one thing, Maren and I think it's in our reports, but we've been doing quite a bit of the mapping of invasive species. It's been going well. We have a great system down. I don't know how many miles we've done. We've done a lot. So that's been good, but we've also changed it up. And if you remember the Remarkable Tree app that we created last year with county planning, we actually are getting access to be able to modify it ourselves. And we mix it up with that a little bit to break up the monotony of it. And if you're down in Queensbury ever, in Glens Falls, there's some really interesting trees if you like them. Actually, we are working with Ben Thomas. I think some of you might know Ben. To look to see if Warren County may have a couple New York State big tree champions. There's one we're going to measure. If you're familiar, Dan, if you're familiar with the Sanford Street School, which is BOCES now, there is a honey locust in the playground, which is 60 inches in diameter. It's the biggest honey locust I've ever seen. There's one larger in New York by diameter, but the big tree registry takes diameter, height, and crown width, and you get points for that. I don't know if that'll make it, but I'm a little bit more confident. In Pineview Cemetery, there's what's called a white fir. We learned them as Western white fir, and right now I think it blows the current one out of the water. And the Douglas fir, there's a large Douglas fir, so you never know. So if you see big trees, we're just going out. We're seeing unique trees. Maren found some black ash, which is used for the baskets. This one wouldn't be used for baskets, about 2 inches in diameter, but it's on Sanford Street in Glens Falls. So, when we're out and about, we pick up these things. It's getting put into a database, and I think it'll be useful. But Crandall Park has some amazing trees if you haven't walked around there. Some huge trees and some unique species. And I'm impressed with what we've seen so far. So if anybody has any unique or large trees and would like to try using the app and aren't comfortable doing it yourself, let us know. We're going to be altering it a little bit, but it's one of those things, like I said, you're out in the field, you notice something, you take it, and maybe we can get a little bit more notoriety for Warren County. And Sarah Frankenfeld from planning thinks it's wonderful, and she's loving it. So
good, great.
And I think that basically is everything that I need to talk about today.
Okay, does anybody have any comments, concerns, questions for anybody that's here? If not, we will get ready. We'll get a motion to adjourn. Everybody all happy?
Somebody say something?
Yeah, what about the reports?
Did you want to?
Staff reports?
Staff reports. I was going to say, anybody had anything? Boy, I'm cutting you off. America. Anything else you wanted, any staff wanted to add to their reports?
I think mine pretty much sums up what we've been working on. Jim and I have spent quite a bit of time out in the field just doing the IMAP and Remarkable Tree app. And yeah, again, if anybody is interested in learning how to do those programs or anything, feel free to reach out to us or join us for a walk in the park if you can, if are comfortable. Nick and I spent quite a bit of time on the Urban Ag Grant at the Warrensburg Community Garden, and that's been going well. Definitely some different challenges than what we had anticipated with watering, but that's all right, and critters. But yeah, I think overall I wrote a little bit about this, but I had a nice tree dedication. I was asked to do another one for the town of Warrensburg for Kathy Rounds, who passed away this spring. And it was really nice to see the community get together. And Kevin Garrity was able to, join us, as well as some other folks from the town. And so, yeah.
Dean, Bob, anything?
I don't know if Dean just bailed.
No, I didn't mean to. I'm still here.
Dean and I
trying to
will be
hit
going out Wednesday or Thursday, depending on whatever day is best for weather, to do our Glens Falls water supply run. That's about it. Probably
And
Thursday.
likewise, I'm just, although the weather isn't conducive, we're going to just keep hydro sheeting as much as we can for municipalities. There's some large projects out there, as Jim alluded to earlier in the meeting, and it'll be a big season this year.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the one thing I wanted to comment too, those monthly reports are excellent. I mean, there's enough details in there. Boy, you cover everything. Really nice job. I'm really impressed for having had to do monthly reports. I'd be kind of embarrassed if I showed you one of mine old days, but very, very well done. It really covers it.
Mimeograph?
Yeah, it was on Mimeograph too. Yeah. Okay, I think we can wrap it up. Unless somebody has any more comments or concerns or needs.
I'll move to adjourn.
Okay. Second?
Second.
Dan, thank you very much, and everybody stay safe.